Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put
Not good. Believe me, not good.
Hello, dissidents. Welcome, one and all, to a Tuesday 2 p.m. edition of the Do Dissidents podcast. Keaton Weiss here with Russell Dobular, of course.
Hello.
Thanks, everybody, very much for being here. Beautiful weather here in New York. Looking like spring, looking like summer. I know Russell's going back to your second swim lesson later this afternoon.
Yes,
Nice.
I am. Yeah, it's a little chilly here, actually.
Oh, yeah?
It's a little chilly. Yeah, the why, it's funny because I had a really hard time finding a place with a pool. There's almost no gyms in New York City because space is at such a premium that have a pool. But the YMCA, I mean, it's like you're dealing with the Catholic Church. They're so old. They have so many donors that they actually have better facilities than you would usually find in a Manhattan gym. They have a sauna. They have a steam room.
Wow. Yeah,
those are very hard to find in gyms, too.
Yeah, that's like an Equinox.
Yep.
Yeah, full facilities. Yeah, that's pretty good. That is pretty good. So we got a bunch of people filing in here already, 626 strong between YouTube and Twitter, 500 even in the Rumble chat. Hit that like button wherever you are. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that follow button. Jake is not here, but his app is working.
Today, actually, I learned how to breathe on the breaststroke. Last time they taught us the stroke.
Right.
But, and I said to the guy, I was like, all right, but I got to stop because I can't get my breath. He was like, next time.
Ah, there you go. So. All right. Cool. Yeah, no, I always loved to swim, and I used to fancy myself a pretty decent swimmer.
Are you a good swimmer?
Well, I mean, I'm comfortable in the water. I could swim fairly fast for an untrained swimmer, but the difference between a trained swimmer and an untrained swimmer is night and day. Where I used to fancy myself a pretty fast, in the pool. And so this was like, I don't know, I was 15, 16 years old. And, we never had a pool growing up. I didn't have access to a pool very often. So I didn't train and learn how to do it formally. So we went out to California one time for a trip, and my cousins live out there, second cousins, whatever they are. And one of them, she actually trains. And so they have an in-ground pool. They take it very seriously.
Yeah.
So she's like, I'll race you.
Who can really swim.
Exactly. She says, I'll race you. I said, all right. Feeling pretty confident, swimming against the girl. See, this is how you know. See, swimming doesn't always necessarily matter. Right. So I'm like, all right, I'll do it. Right.
You were basically going to go Leah Thomas on
exactly. I'm thinking I'm going to Leah Thomas this, right? I'll beat her. She's a girl. She's a little younger than me. She's smaller than me. I'm like, I gotta win this. No, I had no chance. I had zero chance. She routed me. She lapped me because she knows how to do it. It's all about it's not aerodynamic because you're not in the air, but hydrodynamic, if you will. It's about you have to shape your body so that the water doesn't resist. And once you learn how to do that and you keep your back legs still and close together, your body just whoosh, glides through. Then you propel. Like a trained swimmer. Like I said, she was smaller than me, younger than me. Girl kicked my ass. I had no chance.
Well, that was exactly how he started. He started with like pushing yourself across the pool in that like kind of a formation, like
Right.
this very tight kind of formation. That was actually where he started. So once again, because Silver Surfer's like, floaties off yet? Okay, so I can swim. This is what happened. I was a marathon cyclist and I can't do it anymore because I overdid it and I hurt my joints. So I'm trying to find something to replace it with. But if that's going to be the way I'm exercising, this isn't going to do it. I got to have a more vigorous way of doing laps, hence the swimming classes. Not that I can't swim. I can't swim. I can't swim like Keaton's what was that, your cousin?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm learning to swim like that.
Exactly. I like this comment. Keaton has good swimmers. That's true. I do have good swimmers. Thank you.
As we all know.
As you know. All right. First order of business, 827 in YouTube. And
they got the left-hand path.
Yes. You almost
That's
did
usually for Rumble, but I had tea in my other hand.
Yeah, almost spilled your tea. All right, well, left hand coming up now, 684 on Rumble.
Switched it up there.
Beautiful.
That will probably bring on the apocalypse.
Yes. Yeah.
We switched the hands.
Exactly. All right, folks. Well, we are going to get started. Lots of stuff to get to today, as always. This is a bit of an older story, but it's a story that we think is worth covering because what always people say about alternative economic systems to capitalism, well, under communism, X and Y bad things happen. Under socialism, QRSTUV bad things happen. Well, under capitalism, bosses apparently use AI to determine who protests for justice and peace and put them in the naughty pile when it comes hiring time. I didn't know they did this, and we're going to be enlightened here. Here's Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary, threatening student protesters with a lifetime of employment blacklisting using AI technology to root out the bad apples who were protesting for a ceasefire, even on the eve of what seems now to be a certain imminent ground invasion of Rafah. Here's Mr. Wonderful.
What makes this different from all the other previous protests we keep hearing about is that you can see everything clearly.
Yeah.
How is this going to shape up for the futures of these bigots?
So student protests have been with us hundreds of years, and there's always the passion when you're young. What's different about this time is for the first time ever, because you think about the protests in the 60s and 70s, they were shot on 16-millimeter film. Very, very grainy, hard to get.
Okay, before he gets into the AI. Yeah, you're always passionate when you're young. This anti-genocide sentiment, they'll grow out of it. They'll grow out of it. And, it sounds ridiculous, but it's true. It's true. A lot of those boomers who were protesting against Vietnam, they ended up voting for Ronald Reagan 12 years later. You do grow out of it. You get paid, right? I hope they don't. I hope they don't. I hope he's wrong about that. But he's actually not all wrong about that. It's a condescending, shitty thing to say. But it does have a track record of being true. So I hope to God it's not true this time.
I think it might not be true this time because
they're not going to get hired. So they're not going to be able to sell out.
Well, not just that. The gifts and prizes that you get for joining the establishment were a lot better back then. The snacks were better.
That's true.
Snacks were better. Now you can't afford a house.
Right.
You have no job security. All the assets are insanely inflated. I was watching. All right. You might want to put your hands over your ears if you have PTSD. So I was watching Scott Galloway gave a TED Talk. And now I know his main thing is economics. He just dropped this book. In his wisdom, he's decided to run around talking about fucking Israel in the most cringe way you could imagine. And even his economic take is pretty cringe. But this is why you should listen to everybody, even people that you disagree with, because you very often they might have information and come to a conclusion you don't agree with, but the information is good. So what he talked about in this TED Talk was basically how the older generation has used its political and economic power to pull the ladder up for the younger generation by imposing very strict housing permit laws, for example, so that there won't be a lot of new housing built, which keeps the price of their assets elevated. Having favorable tax schemes for homeowners like themselves, for asset holders like themselves with the capital gains taxes, that kind of thing. And he also pointed out how universities have not increased the number of people that they accept at anything like the rate that they've increased their tuition. So he was pointing out at the time that he went to UCLA, they took 75% of people. And now they take something like 6% of people who apply. And he was saying, this has shrunk and shrunk and shrunk opportunity for this generation. Now, where he goes into another direction, which is totally consistent with the kind of person he seems to be, he literally describes education as the opportunity for the 90% to join the 10%.
All right.
And he feels like it's not fulfilling that duty. That's how he sees the problem. Right. So that's where he goes off into Scott Galloway land. But that basic insight and information into the way this generation has shut down opportunity for younger people. And he showed the difference in income relative to the cost of buying a house in the 70s, what percentage people over 65 of the nation's wealth people had in the 70s versus now. And it's as you would expect. So are they going to join? What is there to join? What are they going to join for? It was very different for the boomers. There were a lot of rewards for joining back then.
Of course. Well, not only are the rewards smaller, but as you'll see in the rest of this, if he has his way, these people won't ever be hired in the first place.
Particularly at night. Not the case.
You back this up.
In the 60s and 70s, they were shot on 16-millimeter film. Very, very grainy, hard to get resolution, particularly at night. Not the case now. Everything being shot now is 1080p or 4K, even the surveillance cameras. Every single image, even at night now, goes into an AI generator and will tell you who that individual is. So I hire people. I have a lot of companies. I hire thousands of people. Within weeks, I'm going to be able, when we're doing your background check, I'm going to find this because it's going to be in there on the dark web. Those are the services we buy. It's only $5,000 to do a deep, dark check. Mm-hmm. Here's your resume with a picture of you burning a flag. See that one? That goes in this pile over here because I can get the same person's talent in this pile that's not burning anything.
Right.
I don't care what university or what you're burning or whose side you're on. You'll never know why you didn't get a mortgage. You'll never know why you didn't get into college. You'll never know why you didn't get a mortgage? Wow. So he's going beyond. I didn't even catch that. I didn't even catch that the first time. It's not just employers. No, now you're not going to get a mortgage. We're going to ruin your life using AI. We're going to do a deep, dark check on you. A deep, dark check. That's how your wife asks you to go down on her. Can you do a deep, dark check on me, Mr. Wonderful? Yeah.
All right. What have we said about you discussing your personal life on the show, Keith?
Yeah. This guy's, well, we're going to do a deep, dark check on all of these students, and we're going to deny them mortgages and jobs. We're going to ruin their lives because they're burning things down. Again, total lie. Who's burning anything down? What burned down?
Right.
What
and he's gleeful about it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, this is what they want. They want this corporatocracy where they have this constant boot on your neck. It's funny, 1984, presents this vision of really totalitarian communism. The future is going to be a boot stamping on a human face forever. Yeah. And it looks like capitalism is bringing us to that future. And people like Mr. Wonderful, who know that the system is always going to serve him. He's never going to do anything that's going to make an AI reveal him as a dangerous dissident who shouldn't get a mortgage. These people are gleeful about it. They love the idea of a future like this.
Yep.
Advanced education. You'll never know I didn't get the job because we see you now. And all you need is to have your eyes exposed with a new 4K image, and for the rest of your life, you're in this pile. So,
wait a minute. Whoa. I thought under communism you have an all-seeing, all-knowing government.
Exactly.
The police is your every move.
Yep.
Here you have Mr. Capitalist himself, a billionaire businessman, saying we will, through the private sector, of course, right? Wouldn't want to do it any other way. We're watching you. Big Brother is watching you, except Big Brother in this case is not the government. Big Brother is the 1%. The 1% of the 1%.
Yep.
They have $5,000 lying around to do a deep, dark check on you, whatever the fuck that is, and look into everything you've ever done, and you won't ever know why you didn't get the mortgage. You won't ever know why you can't get a break in life. Because just like a lot of big tech algorithms are kept secret, right? A lot of big tech rules and guidelines on, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, you get your posts shadow banned without you ever knowing. They do the same thing. Turns out they can shadow ban you too in the marketplace. When it comes to housing, when it comes to employment, they can destroy you and you'll never know how or why. I thought this only happens in totalitarian communist countries, dystopian future countries that don't have a free market. No, the free market will do this to you if they want to, because they don't like that you protested a genocide. Wow. Wow.
Well, this is the dream of aristocrats and elites throughout history, to have this kind of capacity for surveillance and control over the population. It doesn't matter whether you call it the Central Committee, whether you call it the People's Republic, whether you call it the 1%. Elites always want to be able to dictate to the population what they can and can't do. It doesn't matter what system you create. This is the disagreement I often have with our Marxist friends, and I don't say that sarcastically. We're friends with a lot of people who have that point of view. I believe that this is what humans do with power. I don't think it's really a matter of what system you have. I think power is always dangerous. And when you have that power concentrated in few hands, which I think always tends to happen because people who have it tend to hoard it in any system. And they pass it on to their connections, to their relatives. It's very hard to get around that when you play out a system over time. As you have often said, all systems are doomed to failure over a longer enough time scale. But if you look at what they're describing, this should raise the alarm bells of anyone who cares about civil liberty. This is so incredibly dangerous. But as we saw at the fucking douchebag festival I was just at.
Dissident douchebag festival.
The Dissident Douchebag Festival. They're not talking about things like this, and I don't think they'd be particularly alarmed about it. Because it's targeting who they want targeted, and that's such a human failing. You see that on both the right and the left. Everybody's a civil libertarian until people that they don't agree with are being targeted with the destruction of their civil liberties, whether it's truckers, whether it's students protesting. The civil liberties end when dangerous elements are being targeted. There are very few people who are really consistently moral on this issue.
Exactly. All right, we'll let this finish up.
See you now. And all you need is to have your eyes exposed with a new 4K image, and for the rest of your life, you're in this pile. So there's plenty of consequences for all those people. Even an image that far away, AI can generate who they are by the way the body moves. I can't believe the stuff I find in background checks now. These people are screwed.
Yeah.
What did Jesse say?
Wow, yeah.
This fucking scumbag douchebag.
Yeah, speaking of scumbag douchebags, these Fox anchors, if a Democrat, I won't even say if a left-wing person, if a Democrat, if Elizabeth Warren.
We can pick out the people from the 1-6 crowd
Right.
with our AI
Exactly.
technology.
If a Democrat were up here talking about that, they would consider this a terrifying infringement on civil liberties. Look at how out of control they are. When it's a billionaire businessman saying he's going to use these kinds of intrusive AI practices or, deep dive scrolls on the dark web about who's been to what protest and when, they got nothing to say. Yeah, that's true. They're screwed. They're screwed. This is why, we're going to get, when we play the Lee Fang interview, so I'll just tease this out very quickly. Russell said, this is kind of, it's both the end of woke and the end of anti-woke. Because you see that these people don't mean anything they say about government abuse, government overreach, surveillance, not a thing. If the right person does it for the right reason, they're all for it. Though that means you have no principles, if that's how you feel. Yeah.
Yep.
Just incredible.
Yeah, and Mr. Wonderful. I mean that we should do a 1984 parody where you have Mr. Wonderful as O'Brien.
Yeah,
because in our system he is.
Yeah.
That's the boot that's going to be stamping on your face. It's going to be some arrogant, narcissistic capitalist saying, "Well, you should have told the line. Who told you to be out there with those signs?"
Right
now. And I have a lot of questions about the way he described this. One, okay, I guess $5,000 is chump change for a big corporation. Although that does seem like a lot of money to put every applicant through when you're not going to hire 99% to drop $5,000 on every applicant.
Right. Well, I guess if Mitt Romney's kid shows up, you can, pretty much assume that he's cool.
Yes, you can save your money there.
Yeah, save your money.
And also, why do you have to go to the dark web? Is this illegal?
Yeah,
like what? I have a lot of questions. Like, why don't you just have services that do this for you?
Yeah,
why
there are
the
background
dark
check
web?
services that are mainstream. What is this? This separate network where we go. Exactly. It's creepy.
What is that? Yeah.
Pretty scary shit. Yeah, indeed. Pat Donahue. When the right marched with tiki torches chanting Jews will not replace us, Fox News and Netanyahu weren't concerned about actual anti-Semitism. Strange. Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's a good point, Pat Donahue.
That's an excellent point.
Yep. Love you guys, says Putz the Mouse. Love
my
you too.
plug came unplugged. Let me put it back in.
Oh, all right. Russell's got to plug his computer back in. All right. Holy shit, Keaton got his ears lowered again. Russell, I just joined a lot pool, and I'm really optimistic because swimming is the best exercise. Whoa, Russell almost crashed into his thing. Thank you, Henry DeShazo. Appreciate that. Kenman over on Rumble. Seinfeld, what's the deal with student protests? When my kids yell like this, my wife strikes them with $5,000 worth of lead pipes and fireworks. Yes, indeed. Okay.
I am just waiting for him to do a concert.
Hanazo, good Lord, I've been waiting for an outlet all day because I am amped the fuck up, as you should be, Hanazo. Thank you. Don't blame me over here. There's a new singer-songwriter on TikTok, says Devanes, thanks for the $2. Jesse Wells. Comments always say he's the new Bob Dylan. Please, everyone, check him out. I will.
You know what?
Music fan.
What's the name? Jesse Wells?
Jesse Wells, yeah.
I am definitely looking for artists to platform who are activists first. So
Yes.
Because I feel like anyone who's an artist first, they're gonna get co-opted.
Yep. Nina can smells bullshit. Shocking. Corporations who use prison labor and employees are lowest pay wages and billions in wage theft hourly employees. Why would they want to pay a decent wage? Thank you, Nina.
Yep. That's something else I'd like to get to. There was just that article in The Lever about how the CEO pay went up even as wages went down. And there was another article, we could do this as related, about how the oil cartels have been controlling prices. And then you have all these people who want to come, you don't understand the economics. You see, when the fast food workers ask for more money, then you can't afford a Big Mac.
Right, yeah, exactly, yeah. Yep.
Okay, all right.
Amadeus, thanks for the $2. Kevin is a perfect example of the need to drop money. Yes, indeed. Okay. Barton Heath, thank you for the $10. If you aren't a liberal as a youth, you have no heart. If you aren't a conservative when older, you have no brain. Disraeli.
I don't know who originally said it. He's asking if it's attributed to Benjamin Disraeli.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know who said that.
I don't know who originally coined that. Some douchebag.
Some douchebag. That's right.
There's actually a response to that.
What is that?
a conservative is a left winger who's never been arrested.
Right. Yeah. There you go. Yes. All right, folks, we're going to go to segment number 2 on the day. We have been following the developments at Columbia University through the protests, through the encampments, through the raid, through Minouche Shafiq's statement after the raid. By the way, our new name for Minouche is the Karen of King's College. Yes. I put that on the thumbnail. Did very well, so people seem to like that. So we'll go with that for her.
We've got that. We got Mike the Glory Hole Johnson. We are racking up quite an impressive list.
Quite a cast of characters, indeed. After weeks of protests, Columbia cancels main commencement ceremony. Columbia's president had earlier said that she did not want to deprive students of an in-person celebration after many graduated high school during the pandemic. Well, folks, this is a short segment because I tweeted out my take on this. I got to share the screen so it works right, but this was my take on this news. There it is.
I mean, okay, this is Keaton's most Marxist tendency. He fucking hates higher education.
Yeah, that's really my take on this. Yes.
He really does. like if Keaton had his way, he would go full Red Army. He would turn the universities into stables.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, indeed. All right, moving on. Next segment. No, just kidding. We have more. The New York Times reports, after weeks of student protests, Columbia University announced Monday that it would be canceling its main commencement ceremony and holding smaller ceremonies. Sorry, I lost my place. For each of its 19 colleges, mostly at its athletic complex, some 100 blocks north, so way upper Manhattan. The university's main campus has been in a state of near lockdown since last Tuesday when hundreds of police officers swarmed Hamilton Hall to remove some 46 pro-Palestinian protesters who had occupied the building and arrested more than 100 people protesting in and around the campus. Dozens of police officers are still on and around campus, leaving questions as to how some 15,000 graduates and their guests could easily be admitted to the area around it for the May 15th commencement. Once again, May 15th is the Nakba anniversary, oddly enough. Holding a large commencement ceremony on our campus presented security concerns that unfortunately proved insurmountable, Ben Chang, a university spokesman, said. He added that the school had made extensive efforts to identify an alternative venue and was unable to locate one that could host such a large event. Like our students, we are deeply disappointed with this outcome. The main campus quad has become an emotionally charged site as the location of the protest encampment and arrests. The 21-acre football and other playing fields at 218th Street in Inwood, known as the Baker Athletics Complex, is more neutral ground. But because the protesters have never heard of the one train. They don't know about that.
They don't know how to get there.
Secret train. They don't know how to get there. Yeah. But
no, there's also an interdimensional porthole, and you got to go through a hellmouth. You have to fight a dragon to get there. There are also some goblins under a bridge. You have to answer a riddle.
Yeah.
So
right.
that'll keep them out.
Unknown area of Manhattan, right? One time, I was when I was working at Radio City Music Hall. It was when I first started the job, made some friends on the job. And one of my friends was, we were having a hangout at his apartment afterwards. And I had another gig that I had to get to that night. I think it was doing a ghost tour or something. So we'd get out at like 3:30, 4 o'clock. The ghost tour's at 7. So he asked if I want to come over to his apartment and hang out for a bit, with some of the other tour guides. I said, all right, I could probably make that. Where do you live? He tells me the Upper West Side because he wants to make it sound like he lives in a cool area. Right. I say, all right, I got time for that. I don't really have much time, but I didn't want to say no. Turns out by Upper West Side, he meant Inwood. So we're on the one train. That's not
the Upper West Side.
No, that's not the Upper West Side.
People pull that shit with the part of Harlem I live in, and it's not legit.
Yeah, they pull that shit. Like we're on the one train.
At least we're right above the Upper West Side.
Exactly. Like we're on 72nd. All right, is this our stop? No, not yet. He's not even telling me when we get off. Is this our stop? No, not yet. 86th. All right, are we getting? No. 208, whatever it is, 220th, whatever the stop is up there.
You weren't worried he was going to kill you?
No, because I had other people with me. But I was like, yeah, where the fuck are we going? Yeah, Upper West Side. Anyway, but the decision was also about capacity. In its announcement, the school said rather than divide its resources to keep both the school-level events and the main commencement ceremony safe, it would instead focus on those school ceremonies and on keeping them safe, respectful, and running smoothly. That's what this is really about. It's about respect. They don't want a bunch of Jose Vegas shouting down the ceremony, which would happen. Now, that's not a security threat. That's an issue of you want it to go off without a hitch. You don't want protesters being able to grab headlines. And in this case, they get to grab the headline of, look at the bully pro-Palestine protesters. They made us feel so unsafe we had to cancel the graduation ceremony. Parents from around the world will be flying in to celebrate commencement with their graduates, which include those completing undergraduate college, law school, medical school, and many other degree programs. Many of this year's graduating seniors, officials pointed out, also had their high school graduations canceled because of COVID-19 precautions, and many had started their college experience in remote learning. We also do not want to deprive thousands of students and their families and friends a graduation celebration, Dr. Shafiq said last week. Many of them are the first in their families to earn a university degree. We owe it to all of our graduates and their loved ones to honor their achievements. At other universities around the nation where protests have broken out, administrators have also canceled or altered commencement events out of concern over renewed protests. 2 weeks ago, the university released a video of several graduates in their blue and white robes explaining how important an in-person ceremony was to them. Let's take a look at that video. Oops. Another deleted video. Wow, Columbia's really scrubbing their history clean these past few weeks. Deleting articles, deleting videos. On Monday, Governor Kathy Hochul criticized Columbia's decision to cancel its main graduation ceremony. The governor said she had offered her support in devising security plans for the upcoming ceremonies at all New York colleges. One thing I did not want to have is the lives and the families and all the young people who've worked so hard disrupted, Ms. Hochul said during remarks at the Milken Institute Global Conference in Los Angeles. Was that the same conference where she said that black kids don't know what computers are? I know she's in the news for that. I don't know where that was. But maybe that stole the headlines from these quotes.
And Ms. Hochul then declared that she is a supporter of President Biden's Record Players for Blacks program.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yes. New plan for the Bronx. Right. I wanted them to have the benefit of walking across the stage. They earned it. The governor added that she had spoken to leaders at NYU, Cornell, City College, and the State University of New York. Now, that has many programs in it, so that doesn't reference a specific campus. That's the SUNY program. On Monday morning, and all those schools confirmed they would proceed with graduation ceremonies as planned. So, look, if they went through with this, there's no doubt that that graduation ceremony would have been disrupted by Free Palestine protesters, as I'm sure many of the kids would want. Right? Like, don't forget, who was leading these protests? It was the students themselves. This is part of why they tried to blame this on outside agitators. Like the kids at the schools don't actually want this. No, the kids at the schools were actually set up in the tents. They actually do want this. So I'm sure a lot of students, the highest quality students, I would argue, the highest caliber students, the students that would be on Kevin O'Leary's do not hire pile, they're the ones who would actually welcome disruption and protest at the ceremony. Just like the protests themselves, they would be nonviolent, they would be peaceful, but they would happen. And they might even shut the ceremony down. That's what protest is supposed to do. So this is one example among many of how these protests have actually been successful. They've actually shaken shit up. Brown University is holding a divestment vote. When they agreed to do that, what did the students do? The students packed up their tents and went back in their dorms because their demands were met. That's the point of protest. So if Columbia wanted to avoid this, they could have done the obvious moral thing, which is divest from Israel. Done. Then your graduation goes off without a hitch. As it turns out, they called in the cops to brutalize students and then closed the graduation because they said that the students posed too much of a security risk because some people might wave a Free Palestine flag in the audience or shout down some commencement speaker that you paid God knows how much money to show up. So I think part of why they did this was to get another PR win over these protesters. Look at what bullies they are. On the other hand, look at all the other campuses that decided, no, we're going to go through with it. So, look, no tears for this university. I'm glad that the protests had an impact. It wasn't the impact they wanted to have. At Brown, it worked. They're holding a divestment vote. Boom. That's a success. This is a success of a kind, too. Anytime you influence policy, that is a flex for a protest movement. It's unfortunate that Columbia chose to handle it this way when they could have handled it the easy way, the moral way, the right way, which is, of course, divest from Israel.
Yeah. This is my question. Why on earth do they assume that none of the graduating students who are going to presumably be admitted to that ceremony are going to protest? Why are they assuming that? I would be surprised out of that many graduates if nobody protests. I would be shocked if there's no such incident. So I don't think that's really going to avoid those optics the way that they think. So I'm gonna give a note of optimism here for folks. Remember, in the past, these protest movements did win in the end. The 1968 protest that ironically is right around the same time, many of the same locations. They did end up divesting from the Vietnam War, from the Defense Department contracts they had. They did wind up changing their plans for the gym that they were building in Harlem. And then as now, so you got fucking scumbag Kevin O'Leary, and I'm not saying this isn't a particularly dystopian development that they have this technology to possibly, although it seems to me he was trying to scare people. I think he was exaggerating a bit. But even if we don't have that technology now, it's around the corner, right? So, okay. So yes, these are new wrinkles, but at the same time, remember what they were doing then to stop these movements. No less draconian, no less authoritarian, 20-year sentences for having a joint. They were doing things like that to crack down on them. That was the equivalent then, which I think you could argue is worse than anything that's happening to anyone thus far. You want to talk about a career ender, 20-year sentence because you smoked a joint. So this is nothing new. Authority, the media came out, even having the public against you. Their public was much more against the students then than they are now in regards to the underlying issue, because I believe all the way until the end, really the final years, the majority supported Vietnam because they're coming out of that World War II, patriotic, and it's pre-Watergate. They still trust the government. They still trust that if the government's telling them they should be in Vietnam, then these kids are just long-haired freaks who, are a disgrace to the country. You don't have that as much now. So there are rays of light. We showed that guy who was in the protests in 1968 saying how things have only gotten worse. And I would say that that's probably true in a lot of respects, but not in others. Remember, at that time, what are you, a couple of years away from the British getting out of most of the countries they colonized? Like there are things that are better now, actually, than then. And of course, you have social media, which was something they did not have. They had to hand out pamphlets on a corner where you didn't have this kind of ability to do civilian reporting and independent reporting and have those videos go around the world. I had 30 seconds with Richard Dawkins. Over 1 million people have seen it, right? Yeah. So look at the bright side. We don't say that a lot, but look at the bright side. Yes, there are some terrifying technologies that did not exist in 1968, but they cut both ways. That cuts both ways.
Yes, well said. Abiding, thanks for the 99 cents. Appreciate it, my friend. Back from the road, thanks for the 1999. That's kind of you. This is the definition of fascism. The state and corporation coming together to support nationalism and the war machine. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Also, thanks for the show. Thank you. Yes, that's a good point.
Man.
Yep. P. Walker. There's no daylight between O'Leary types and the WEF, but their followers can't see it. Yes, exactly. Exactly. This is why those Javier Milei douchebags are like so mind-blowingly fucking confused. It's like
this fucking scumbag douchebag.
Right. Like they don't get that when he goes there and says, "You guys are the heroes of tomorrow," he's talking about them. You see, that's what he's talking about. Yes.
Fuck up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fuck
exactly.
Up. Don't let the peasants get you down.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Man of the people, right? I meant the U.S. dollar in the short run. Gotcha. Thank you, Amadeus. Appreciate that. I remember your comment there. Progressive lefty, O'Leary is such a scumbag. Even the Conservative Party rejected him when he tried to run for PM in Canada. Wow.
Oh, is he Canadian? I didn't even know he was Canadian.
Yeah. Yeah, they probably wouldn't have universal health care if he had his way. He'd probably dismantle that. That's why he's too far right for them,
he certainly would want to.
Yeah. I like that. I bet his pool boy gives his wife deep, dark checks. Yeah. It's going to be the title of this podcast episode, Deep, Dark Checks. I think that's good. I was looking for a title. Yeah. Next year, the price of a deep, dark check will come down while the price of eggs will double. Yeah. Exactly, crowd check. Indeed. Alrighty, everybody. Let's go to segment number 3. So this is a pre-recorded segment of sorts. We mentioned on our last episode that at the Dissident Dialogues Festival, Russell caught up with many attendees, including Lee Fang, who gave us a great interview outside of the venue. So go ahead, Russell. You want to set this up for a second?
Yeah, Lee actually was on the only panel, to my knowledge. I want to be fair, but I saw everything pretty much. The only things I missed was there was a woman from Iran, as you would predict from my descriptions of this festival, extremely anti-Iranian government, which I am as well, but there's some nuance there too. I don't mind that if you're not so relentlessly pro-Western.
Right.
But when you put those things together, it's just a State Department convention at that point. But Lee did the only panel that actually brought up the House bill that basically criminalizes criticizing Israel on college campuses, which everyone there was against. Now, I had a little bit, Michael Schellenberger retweeted out his comment on the festival being basically center-right when I asked him why there was very little discussion of that bill. And we think that they bothered him about it because he retweeted the clip, so he must have liked it. And then later on, he pointed out that it was brought up in the panel, but I never said it wasn't. I said for the most part, and that's why I said it.
And he tagged the conference in his reply, which to me, we don't know this for sure, but I strongly suspect they read the tweet and they asked him to issue a correction so they didn't look bad.
Exactly. Yeah. And I did not say nobody mentioned it. That's why I used that language, because I knew it had been brought up. But it's shocking at a speech festival where this had just passed. It's not like it happened a month ago. You could understand that.
Right.
It was literally a couple days before the festival and nobody brought it up. So, it was interesting when you would see like Michael or you would see Lee. It was okay. These are two of the only people I can talk to without it turning into like the kind of thing that's going to get me thrown out of here.
Right.
So, I was very eager to talk to people like that because I didn't want to get thrown out. So Lee, he was very cool. He was very nice. I saw him hanging out in back, drinking a cup of coffee, asked him to do an interview. We had a beautiful backdrop there off New York Harbor.
Yeah.
And he had a lot of really interesting things to say. Very smart guy.
Yeah, I'm not just saying this because Russell did it. This is my favorite interview I've seen of Lee Fang's because he's very chill and laid back, just got the coffee in his hand. This is about 15 minutes, but I think it's really worth sharing, so we're very excited to show it to you all. We're going to full screen this, and then we'll talk a little bit about it afterwards.
All right, we are here with Lee Fang at the Dissident Dialogues. How you doing today, Lee?
I'm great.
All right, so you just actually dropped an article, timely enough, about how this double standard on speech is being imposed right now around speech regarding Israel and Zionism. So Congress just passed a crazy bill that essentially would make it illegal to criticize Israel on college campuses. So you want to talk about that a little?
Yeah, the bill, the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, this is a piece of legislation that's been pushed for many years, but this bill in Congress and variations of it on the state level are now suddenly flooding capitals and state houses around the country. And essentially what it does, the federal legislation, is call on the government to enforce the 1964 Civil Rights Act with an eye towards anti-Semitism and a provision that defines anti-Semitism with the definition provided by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. Now, this is a private organization, NGO, made up of many different countries, including the State of Israel, that has a list of terms and concepts that they include as anti-Semitism. Many of these terms include various forms of criticism of the State of Israel, one of which is the claim that the State of Israel is racist. Now, whether you agree or don't agree with this claim that the State of Israel is racist, that's a separate discussion. This is a clear violation of First Amendment rights. Any American citizen can say the American government's racist, the Canadian government's racist, any foreign government. This bill narrowly penalizes students and faculty at universities for criticizing the State of Israel. That's suppressing their speech around a foreign government. And, you know, this is just coming at a time of an incredible crackdown on speech rights. And there's an attempt to weaponize allegations of bigotry, just as we've seen in the last decade that there were some on the left that attempted to weaponize the term racist to stigmatize any of their political opponents, any Republican or anyone who opposed with their ideas. They were branded as a racist, and that's kind of an intellectual or mental shortcut to shut down any debate. The debate around Israel-Palestine, Israel's conduct in Gaza, is being shut down with the same mental shortcut of anti-Semitism. And that's really the intent and the effect of legislation like this, which, again, there's very similar versions of this popping up all around the country. And it would empower the Department of Education to cut off federal funding for certain universities where students or protests are engaged in rhetoric or debates that criticize the State of Israel.
Okay, so we were talking a little bit about this before. Now, this is a free speech conference, and I have really not heard people talking about this. We're in the middle of one of the greatest crackdowns on student speech since the Vietnam era. I mean, the greatest since the Vietnam era. Shouldn't civil libertarians be up in arms about that, no matter what your political ideology is?
They should be, but we're all human beings. We all have blind spots. I think there's a part of this is that there's maybe just desserts is the term. I'm not sure. A lot of these faculty members and student protesters have, in very recent history, as recently as last year and in the last decade, have been the vanguard of shutting down speech. Sure. They have been the censors. So there's a reluctance to embrace their cause, even though they're now the victims of state censorship. Of, look what happened at the University of Texas, Austin, a place where it's supposedly a bastion of free speech, where the governor declared it as free speech zone. Now the governor is demanding that state troopers raid these pro-Palestinian camps and arrest and jail the students. Incredible hypocrisy there. There are many fair weather supporters of free speech. That being said, there are still many civil libertarians on the right who have been outspoken and very principled on this cause.
Massey.
Massey has been stronger than many Democrats.
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's an interesting coalition. The coalition that has raised important questions about military adventurism around the world, whether that's the expansion of NATO and the war in Ukraine, around Israel-Palestine, around the war in Yemen, and some concerns around Asia-Pacific, and around free speech rights at home. It's really the populists in Congress. It's elements of the Progressive Caucus and elements of the House Freedom Caucus. And unfortunately, the establishment is working in lockstep. It's, you know, you have Nancy Pelosi, San Francisco liberal, really with no daylight between her, with Mike Johnson, you know,
right,
Christian right nationalist, evangelical, on these very fundamental issues of speech and war. So, you know, we've heard a little bit of discussion of this at this conference, but we obviously need a lot more.
Part of what's been very strange to me is, okay, on the one hand, you've had people arguing against the students in that spirit. This is the end of woke. Now, over the course of this conference, I'm forced to agree, but from the other side, because this is the end of a lot of civil libertarians who claim to really support free speech, because there seems to be an Israel exception. So not only is it the end of woke, I would say it's the end of anti-woke, because a lot of things that sounded very credible, I'm on that side ideologically. Like for the last 2 years ago, if I had heard a lot of this, I would say, right on. I mean, I was.
Yeah.
And now I'm listening and I'm saying, okay, well, but except for Israel, what happened?
Look, I think a lot of this debate gets obliterated in terminology. What is woke? You know, for me, and I think maybe my definition differs from some of the folks here or elsewhere, but what we've seen is this kind of phenomenon where a identity politics group, a group of racial or ethnic background,
right,
whether that's Black Americans, trans Americans, or Jewish Americans, and they take a deterministic view of history. They say because of a history of oppression, a history of discrimination and violence from the state and elsewhere, that there's permanently a oppressor-oppressed class, that we're always going to be victimized, and therefore we can respond with illiberal forms of behavior or structures, whether that's, you know, racial quotas that restrict whites, or, you know, a state of Israel that's an ethno-state that excludes others who are not Jewish. That's fundamentally, you know, I think one could argue that Israel is a woke state. You know, if Black Lives Matter, you listen to the rhetoric and the demands that they want self-determination for Black people, that Black people, because of the history of discrimination, deserve special rights. Not that we're a kind of a departure from the Enlightenment values that we're all equal under the law. They say no, that we should have different rules based on skin color.
Right.
Well, the state of Israel is not that different, but they're saying a different set of rules for people of Jewish descent. So, you know, and in many ways, October 7th was a George Floyd moment for conservatives. This was such a painful event. This was such a gruesome, violent terrorist attack that it invoked the same psychological response that the George Floyd killing had. And we've seen this kind of overreach and, you know, hypocrisy and people really kind of eviscerating their old values because they're in a state of shock and fear.
Now, you've also written about Ukraine. That's what you were on Jimmy's talking about, how Ukraine is actually, in a backdoor way, censoring Americans. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, I've been reading the contracts. You know, the federal government, in some ways, they're completely opaque and non-transparent. In other ways, they're incredibly transparent. You can kind of read the lists of money going in and out. And I've been reading the contracts for USAID grants to groups that are setting up media outlets and journalists and watchdog groups in Ukraine as part of a democracy building program. These are a lot of the same contractors that worked in Afghanistan and Iraq after the invasion and occupation of those countries. But what differs here is that in Ukraine, many of these US-funded media groups and disinformation watchdogs and what have you, I mean, they're supposedly set up to strengthen Ukraine's democracy and create a bulwark against Russian disinformation and a quality news source for the country. But you look at the behavior of these media outlets, they are attacking American critics of the war. Very reasonable critics, very well-known critics, people like Glenn Greenwald, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, John Mearsheimer, University of Chicago professor, very well-respected. And they're defaming them by claiming that these are Russian conspiracy theorists, you know, Russian disinfo. And, you know, I look at what the contractors did in Afghanistan. They weren't producing this English language content. They weren't, the Afghan media outlets that we helped create with USAID weren't working with Facebook to help censor the internet, but the Ukraine awardees of USAID and State Department money, they're working as official partners with Meta, with Facebook and WhatsApp, to censor the internet. So, in effect, what we have is that the U.S. government is creating a messaging machine for the war that's not only designed for an information war with the Russians, but they're also affecting our own domestic debate of how we discuss American foreign policy discussions.
And again, why don't you see more people on the right speaking out about this? Because it seems to only be, okay, so this is what I feel is not represented. There's an anti-woke left. There's a left that's not into speech codes and all that, and it seems to be invisibilized from the conversation, giving one the impression that the only people speaking out about these things are Republicans or Thomas Massey or conservatives or libertarians. Whereas, I mean, I assume you identify as left, right?
On many issues, yeah. I mean, I've worked for left-wing outlets my entire career until last year, and I've gone solo on Substack. But on traditional left-wing ideas of class and, you know, controlling the power of the corporate state, sure, I'm on the left. You know, maybe on some other areas I'm not, but yeah, it's a very lonely experience because there are not many other people in this world. You know, that, especially on issues where you saw people on the left criticizing the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, looking very critically at the role of government contractors in these conflicts, questioning the military's narratives about their progress in those conflicts. You know, the military lied to us for 20 years in Afghanistan, but now we see many on the left in Congress and in the media not really expressing any skepticism about what the military claims on Ukraine.
Yeah, that continues with Ukraine, even as there are these massive protests in other areas. Yes, the image of what kind of fits the bill of a settler colonial state committing this kind of mass slaughter against brown people, I do think fits the post-colonial studies that they've been reared in.
Yeah.
I think what's happened here is the establishment never intended that to interfere with their agenda. That's why they backward focused it. They never talked to these kids about what's happening now. They talked about slavery from 150 years ago. They talked about the colonial era and painted this picture. We're past that. So yes, there is a certain schadenfreude that these kids who were trapping Riley Gaines in a classroom a year ago are suddenly facing this. But what do you think that's going to do to this generation? In conclusion, what do you think?
This is a big picture question. I don't know how I can answer it, but I think fundamentally to the part of what you just said is that some of these officially supported left-wing movements. When I mean officially, I mean look what happened with Black Lives Matter, Google, Amazon, you know, the whole Fortune 500 throwing money at these groups. You know, politicians kneeling and saying they support the agenda. You know, major foundations, billionaire-backed foundations, promising unlimited support. And compared to some of these anti-war movements, we see kind of a difference in material and official support. I think there was a cynical level there where they didn't actually see any fundamental threat to the ruling class. That, you know, at worst, maybe we'd get some new HR managers who call themselves DEI, you know, and some changes to some forms of policing around the edges, although fundamentally not much changed about policing at all. If anything, we saw some pullback of policing in low-income communities that have actually been kind of a travesty as the homicide, violent crime has gone up.
Right.
But fundamentally, do we see any structural change in America in terms of class and power? No. And that wasn't the focus of those protests. It was this kind of, you know, discussion of history and symbolism, not a kind of a materially grounded critique of American society. And, you know, this current movement, what we're seeing now is, you know, there's a lot of silly stuff that happens in protests. There are extremists. There are people that fundamentally don't understand what's going on in Gaza and Israel. They think it's a race thing, even though, you know, the Mizrahi, Arab, Israelis, Jewish Israelis are also brown. Like, it's like we want to project our own racial identity politics on every conflict, but it's much more complicated there.
Sure.
I don't know where it ends up, but it's very different from previous protests.
All right, Lee, where can people find you?
Substack at leefang.com. That's F-A-N-G.
All right, I am a subscriber. Check him out. He does great work. Thank you, Lee.
Hey, thank you so much.
Thank you, man.
All right. Great job. Round of applause for Russell in the chat. It was an excellent interview. It was really good. It was really, really well done. I thought his answers were very interesting. Go ahead. Your thoughts first. You're the one who did it.
Yeah, he's very sharp. You know, I've talked about this on the show, and he kind of, you know, also pointed that out, that they didn't crack down this way on Black Lives Matter. They haven't cracked down this way
Crystal
on those
Ball
other
said same
protest
thing.
movements. But this one, because you're messing with their shit. Those movements never, and he pointed that out. I said that on the show the other night. Like, yes, exactly. They always knew Black Lives Matter was not going to get its demands met except at the margins. If anything, it might empower a backlash of more police funding. That's what Biden did, right? He didn't defund the police. He gave them more money. He gave more money to the police. This movement, you can tell, is a real threat to power by how quickly they crack down on it. You see Amazon tweeting out the Palestine flag? You see any of that kind of support? You see Target getting behind these protests? You see them opening up a Palestine baby wear section at Target? Right. So yeah, his answer there was very interesting. Yeah, and his reporting is great. I DM'd him that we were doing it. He asked to have a link when we dropped it, and hopefully we'll have him on. He was very sharp.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that about the shirts. I just ordered a watermelon shirt, right? A watermelon, logo shirt, and I had to order it online because they're not carrying those in the stores. Notice that? No free Palestine watermelon logo T-shirts.
No, they are not. No, they are not. They don't have that section.
Right.
So yeah, it was nice with both of them to talk to Schellenberger, to talk to Fang, even although this wasn't on camera, even talking to Brianna out back. It was just nice to talk to anybody who was not just obsessed with pronouns in a world on fire.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And his point about the Schadenfreude, that's one thing I would like to zero in on, because I think he's right in the sense that a lot of people feel Schadenfreude for these college kids because they were the censors just a year ago, right? Yep. On the other hand, what I've said about this is, like, if Schadenfreude actually trumps principle, it means you're not seriously principled, right? Like, Schadenfreude is fine to feel, but not at the expense of your principles, right? Like, when Trump won in 2016, I felt great Schadenfreude. It was a very, very funny and entertaining and hilarious and vindicating evening for me. I very much enjoyed watching him win. I'm not ashamed to say that at all. But the reason I'm not ashamed of that is because I didn't think he was Hitler, and I didn't think he was 1,000 times worse than had the election gone the other way. Like, if I actually thought that Trump was this once-in-a-century dictator, I wouldn't have felt that Schadenfreude. And a lot of people on the left who are very anti-Hillary also felt that Trump was 1,000 times worse, and so they didn't feel the same joy when he won that I did, because I didn't think that he was much worse, if any worse. I remember we were saying in 2016, Hillary's going to start a war with Russia if she wins. And what did all the shit libs say? Oh, this hysterical, fear-mongering nonsense. Well, look where we are now.
She was saying it. She was saying she wanted to impose a no-fly zone in Syria.
Exactly. So
she was saying it on the campaign trail.
It wasn't hyperbole at all. And so I felt, well, these outcomes are both really terrible. I'm not convinced Trump is any worse than she is. And so I felt Schadenfreude because I didn't feel that Hitler had just won. If I felt that way, I'd feel less Schadenfreude, because Schadenfreude should never trump your actual, like, political convictions. And so if you are dunking on these kids, how do you like it? Well, that means you're not really serious about the principle. It means you're only in it to dunk on people. It's this very performative, shallow way of looking at the world. Yeah.
Yeah, I would dare say there's no legit left channel that has spent more time, not because of you, but because I take an interest in it, talking about these kinds of culture war issues and taking that side of it. We've critically covered the 1619 Project. Obviously, from very early on, we were talking about the dangers of medicalizing children with comorbidities and such. And, we delved into it, I would dare say, more than any other channel that could legitimately be called a left channel. This is why I'm glad I went to this weekend. It's really, I'm in the process of trying to figure out what the hell's going on here, because so many people like Buck Angel, who we're going to have an exclusive, folks, that is going to be very interesting later in the week. That's all I'm going to say about that right now. I don't think he'll be coming on anymore after that one, though. But why do you have so many people in that space who are fanatical Zionists? This is what I mean. Like, October 7th was very, very clarifying on all of these levels. I honestly cannot. I'm working towards a theory. I can't figure it out.
I mean,
I honestly can't.
If it helps us workshop a little bit, these are Western chauvinists and pseudo-intellectuals for the most part. It's the same thing. The new atheists were the same thing. And I know this because I went through a new atheist phase where I thought Sam Harris was like this smart, edgy guy, right? Like, it is very easy.
But Buck's no intellectual.
No, right. You know? I'm just talking about the people at this conference, right? Right. As an example, right? It is very easy for these new atheists to intellectually pick apart, debunk, organize religion, point out the inconsistencies, the fallacies of religion, and the moral sort of hypocrisies of devoutly religious people. Like, that's very easy to do. You could do that with pretty perfect, airtight logic, and you can look really smart doing it. Well, you can do the same thing as an anti-wokester, right? The anti-wokesters and the new atheists are the same exact way. Like, you can very easily point to the inconsistencies of gender ideology and very easily point to the moral sort of double standards imposed by people who really buy into that. That's very easy to do. It's a very easy target, but it can also be very reductive. And the new atheists and the anti-wokesters are also very reductive, even where they are, quote unquote, logical. And I actually shouldn't say quote unquote, they are logical, but they are very reductive, and they view people very simplistically, to the point where when you scratch the surface, when you scratch under the surface, you look under the hood, it's very easy to see, oh yeah, Sam Harris actually is a Western chauvinist. Oh yeah, these people have a hatred for the blue-haired wokesters that goes beyond just what they say and what they do. They actually intrinsically hate them, and they cannot resist an opportunity to dunk on them and embarrass them and humiliate them because they're bullies. A lot of these anti-wokesters are bullies, just like a lot of the new atheists are as well, right? And they pick the low-hanging fruit of dismantling their arguments to look like this is an intellectual exercise, which on a certain level it is, but on a much deeper level, these are nasty bullies who get off on picking on people who they feel are vulnerable and even ridiculous. And that's where I think a lot of it comes from.
Okay, so yes. And it's not that there's no one in my lane, right? I mean, Lee said it's a lonely position. You know, we probably are pretty much around the same territory, I'm sure. Although there are things I think I probably disagree with Schellenberger about generally. See, this basic idea that rationality, logic, open debate are a net good, that society can't function, that if you really believe in these Western values, those are part and part. That's the core of these Western values.
Sure.
So I think that is part of what has surprised me. Not that some people in that lane, so you're always going to have some, that someone like Louise Perry, who wrote a great book arguing something I have long argued, and she really boiled it down very well and articulated very well why the sexual revolution has not been all it's cracked up to be. And she doesn't go to the crazy place, we need to all be trad wives, but she explains a lot of the sexual liberation has not really benefited women because a lot of those strictures, in spite of what you've been told, were actually put in place to protect women as the ones who get pregnant. They were not all patriarchal and oppressive. I mean, they might have played out in that form, but they also served another function that the post-sexual revolution has left them without that protection and expected to treat sex like men. And she argues something that I would also agree with, that there's a biological difference, even on a psychological level, between men and women, that the biology affects feelings about sexuality. Okay, all that's great. All that's great. That's very well thought out. Why are you a rabid anti-Palestine Zionist? I mean, and I guess some of it is what you're talking about.
Yeah, it all gets lumped together.
It just seems to me that if you really believe in debate and you really believe, and I guess that's what it is, they don't really believe it, they pay lip service to it. But if you really believe, as I do, in having a process of rational and logical debate where you don't assume bad motives on the part of the other person that's kind of out of bounds to go ad hominem on them, that you're going to sit down and have an honest conversation. These are all ideals that I embrace, and until 5 minutes ago, they all claimed to embrace them too, but they immediately, and this was a very consistent theme throughout this conference, they immediately lumped all the students in with trapping Riley Gaines in a classroom. And they're not wrong that these are the same kids, but what they're not seeing is the reason they're protesting like this. Part of the reason is because this treatment of Israel and the treatment of this situation is a contradiction of everything they were told by their professors that they were supposed to believe in. See, they're seeing it as consistent with it, and it's not.
Well, they also see Islamophobia as consistent with their defense of debate and Western values. That's the thing. These people hate Muslims because they see theocratic Muslim countries as standing against the Western values of debate and open dialogue, right? And a lot of theocracies are against debate and open dialogue. That's why it's easy to buy into this bullshit that these people sell, because there is a kernel of truth there.
But so is Israel. They just shut down a fucking newspaper.
Well, this is the thing.
Like, why in defense of Israel? Even if you want to make that argument, which, again, I am very much on the side of the enemy of the United States is not by definition good. Two things can be bad at the same time. I think people have a tendency to want to believe in a very, Star Wars good and bad, good versus evil universe. And the world is more complicated than that. Just like I don't think everything about Iran is evil. You can't all of a sudden turn around and say, well, that's great, that theocracy. That's
no, but this
is
where, I would say Lee had it half right and half wrong when he say this isn't about race, because to a certain extent, this of course is. Right.
When you look at who the ruling class in Israeli society is, they are the Ashkenazis.
Exactly.
The Europeans.
Exactly, yes. And so in that sense, it is very much about race. And these Zionists represent, I would argue, this very racist strain of Judaism that's obsessed with bloodline and conquest and land. And yes, those like material concerns trump race. They always do. Race is always downstream of a bigger motive, right? But they do use race to justify their actions and to legitimize their actions with us here in the U.S. And that's why I think a lot of these people, and by these people, I mean the people at the Dissident Dialogues Festival, that's why they reflexively take Israel's side, because they see Israel, despite all of their political problems, which get very little press in our media, they see Israel as a bulwark of Western values in the
civilization.
East. Right.
All right. Let me float this to you, because this was kind of the direction I've been going in thinking about this. Okay, so yeah, intellectual, blah, blah, blah. But, if you're reflexively conservative, if you're basically conservative, well, you're going to tend to resist new ideas. Now, just because I personally happen to believe they're right about postmodern inflected critical theory doesn't mean that their reaction to it is not coming from a conservative impulse. It doesn't mean that it's not coming from a conservative mindset. So to assume just because they happen to have stumbled into being right doesn't mean they're not intrinsically conservative or motivated, not so much by the fact that they're right, but by the fact that they fear change. That's the underlying motivation for a lot of these people, even if they happen to be right about or I think they happen to be right about the particular changes that they're talking about. And conversely, a lot of people who are in our lane who just really uncritically accept any kind of critical theory that comes along are reflexively pro-change. And it's just really about the psychological makeup of the kinds of people who are attracted to each of those camps. And most people, even if they claim to be rationalists, they're really not rationalists.
Yeah, I think that makes sense too. I think that's a good working theory as well. We'll have to flesh that out and circle back.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Right now it's an idea, but if I get some funding, I can develop it into a concept.
That's right. Mr. Awesome, did you guys hear Macklemore's new track, Heinz Hall? Yes, we did. We'll be covering that tomorrow. So tomorrow's Rumble stream only. So we'll be covering that tomorrow. Thank you. Appreciate that. Rebel Cat Tom and T, the chat wants some scumbag douchebag tote bags in your merch store. That would be actually really good.
I think it's a good idea.
A tote bag that says scumbag douchebag tote bag. We would have to do the play on words there. Or you could have it as those like word puzzles, right? Scum blank, douche blank, tote blank. Then the answer is bag.
Well, we'll have to rush those out for June 9th for the show.
Yeah, that would be good. That would be very good. Aodon R. Keaton, I sent you that song the other week by Jason Wells. Oh, yeah, War Isn't Murder, Ringing Any Bells. It does. Okay, so that's him. Okay, I didn't remember who the artist was.
Oh,
but yes,
somebody said Jesse Wells. That's what I have written down. Is it Jesse Wells or Jason Wells?
I don't remember the name, but it's the guy. He sent me, somebody emailed us a video of a guy with a song on YouTube. If that's who we were talking about, then yes, it does ring a bell. Thank you for that. All right, let's take some super chats over here on the YouTube side. 1889 on YouTube, 2110 over on Rumble. We are on the homepage. We are on the editor picks. Rumble gave us a plug again, so thank you, Rumble. Shout out to those guys. Appreciate that. Amadeus, thanks for the $2. I meant the U.S. dollar in the short. Oh, yeah, sorry, I put that up already. Laugh, thank you very much. I remember a Tory proclaiming, if you are seen standing at a bus stop over the age of 30, you can consider yourself to have failed in life. Dawkins, yeah. The Richard Dawkins. If you ride public transit, you're a loser. Richard Dawkins. Yes. Whoever played the violin, fucking legend. Well, that's me. I hit that sound cue. Thank you, Henry DeShazo. Appreciate that. Let's see here. Did y'all check out David Rovix yet? He's an anti-war, anti-capitalist folk musician who'd be a great guest, and his latest album is dedicated to Gaza. Okay, there you go. David Rovix. There we go. Perfect. So Russell's going to write that down. Thank you, DC. Appreciate that. That's Rovics. Michael Castillo, thanks for the $20. That's kind of you. I'm looking to go to the DNC. I heard that you two and Jimmy will be there.
Jimmy hasn't confirmed. He was looking at it. But me, I believe Nick's going.
Yes.
And obviously Kit will be there.
Yes. I will have a few-week-old baby at that point, so I will not be attending the convention because my third child is due end of July. So I will not be there. But we'll be doing some work from there.
May your third child be a masculine child.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. And I'll be doing some work from here on that. I'll be putting together some streams there for sure. Let's see here. Joseph Roy, thanks for the $2 super sticker. Appreciate that. Let's see. Let's go on. Oh, let's take a couple more of these. Don't know if I feel good. Russell didn't betray me by moving in on my action or feel disappointed. He didn't recognize he could have closed the deal as Bree's only ally in hostile environment. Well, I did talk to her. She was nice. She was fine. She let the security, push Russell through. She could have told security to beat the shit out of him.
Yeah.
I mean, she'd have been
Oh,
somewhat
that
justified. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, it would have been some.
Get him.
He couldn't exactly say he didn't have it coming. If he did that.
I would have had to say fair enough.
Yeah, he would have had to say fair enough. Yeah, exactly. Didn't catch the last live DD until the tail end, so I missed the part where Russell got to meet with Bree. Yeah, we've been in touch since. She might come on this Sunday. We're trying to put something together.
We're trying.
Henry DeShazo, yeah, Lee to be trim AF. I need to hit that lat pull. Yeah, you know, it's funny, Henry. I thought the same thing. Looking at that upper body shot, I'm like, man, this guy's in good shape. How does he have the time to be in good shape and I don't? Yeah, Schellenberger too. How does he have the time to be in good shape and I don't? Why is that? I guess I did it to myself. You know, when you have 2 kids, it's hard to find the time.
That's it.
That's why they call it a dad bod, right? Because who the fuck has time? We have an hour a day. I'm supposed to work out for an hour a day? When? All right.
I'm going to be getting up early, man. That pool's open for laps 7 to 9 in the morning.
Oh, there you go. Beautiful. Yeah, that's the best time to do it. Is early morning.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Let's go on to segment number 4. All right, folks. We got to do it. I don't love doing it, but we got to give Mehdi Hassan a bit of a plug here since he had an exclusive on this. His new outlet, ZTO, whatever the hell, I don't know how you say that, ZETEO, has an exclusive. You've been warned. Republican senators threaten the ICC prosecutor over possible Israel arrest warrants. Yes, that's right. A group of influential Republican senators has sent a letter to International Criminal Court Chief Prosecutor Karim Khan, warning him not to issue international arrest warrants against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and other Israeli officials, and threatening him with severe sanctions if he does so. In a terse one-page letter obtained exclusively by ZDO, we'll just say that until we know how to say it right, and signed by 12 GOP senators, including Tom Cotton of Arkansas, Florida's Marco Rubio, and Ted Cruz of Texas, Khan is informed that any attempt by the ICC to hold Netanyahu and his colleagues to account for their actions in Gaza will be interpreted not only as a threat to Israel's sovereignty, but to the sovereignty of the United States. Mitch McConnell, party leader, is also a signatory on this letter, so this was not like a group of people who went rogue. They did this with the blessing, if you will, of the head of the Republican Party. What did I say here? Did I read that last sentence? No, I didn't, right? In a terse one-page letter. Oh, yeah, no, I did say that. Yeah. All right, so here we go. Sorry about that. So here's the letter. Lost my spot there for a second. We're going to take a closer look at this letter right now. Dear Mr. Khan, we write regarding the reports that the International Criminal Court may be considering issuing international arrest warrants against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and other Israeli officials. Such actions are illegitimate and lack legal basis, and if carried out, will result in severe sanctions against you and your institution. The ICC is attempting to punish Israel for taking legitimate actions of self-defense against their Iranian-backed aggressors. In fact, in your own words, you witnessed scenes of calculated cruelty conducted by Hamas in Israel following the October 7th attacks. These arrest warrants would align the ICC with the largest state sponsor of terrorism and its proxy. To be clear, there is no moral equivalence between Hamas's terrorism and Israel's justified response. The ICC is also prohibited by its charter from proceeding in any case unless the relevant government is unwilling or unable to police themselves. You yourself have said that Israel has trained lawyers who advise commanders and a robust system intended to ensure compliance with international humanitarian law. By issuing warrants, you would be calling into question the legitimacy of Israel's laws, legal system, and democratic form of government. And? Like, what's the, like, yes, they would be. I'm sure they are aware of that. I'm sure they understand those implications, and I'm sure they're comfortable with that, as they should be. Issuing arrest warrants for the leaders of Israel would not only be unjustified, it would expose your organization's hypocrisy and double standards. Your office has not issued arrest warrants for Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei or any other Iranian official, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad or any other Syrian official, or Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh or any other Hamas official. Nor have you issued an arrest warrant for the genocidal Secretary of the People's Republic of China. Ooh, that hits you guys hard in the chat got there, I assume. Here, here. This one is for all you guys.
Where the fuck do you get the balls?
Yeah, I did that for you. Nor the genocidal Secretary of the People's Republic of China, Xi Jinping, or any other Chinese official. Finally, neither Israel nor the United States are members of the ICC and are therefore outside of your organization's supposed jurisdiction, your so-called jurisdiction. If you issue a warrant for the arrest of the Israeli leadership, we will interpret this not only as a threat to Israel's sovereignty, but to the sovereignty of the United States. Our country demonstrated in the American Service Members Protection Act the lengths to which we will go to protect that sovereignty. More on that in a couple of minutes, folks. The United States will not tolerate politicized attacks by the ICC on our allies. Target Israel, and we will target you. This is an official letter from 12 senators. Target Israel, and we will target you. If you move forward with the measures indicated in the report, we will move to end all American support for the ICC, sanction your employees and associates, and bar you and your families from the United States. You have been warned. Sign those 12 GOP senators. The article continues. While neither Israel nor the United States are members of the ICC, the Palestinian territories were admitted with the status of a member state in April 2015. Khan, a British lawyer, was appointed as the ICC's chief prosecutor in February 2021, a week after the court had already decided by majority that its territorial jurisdiction extended to Gaza and the West Bank. In the wake of the attacks of October 7th, 2023, Khan announced that the court had jurisdiction over any potential war crimes committed by both Hamas militants in Israel and by Israeli forces in Gaza. The ICC, per the Rome Statute of 2002, can charge individuals with war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide, and recent reports suggest Israeli officials increasingly believe that the ICC is preparing arrest warrants for Netanyahu and other senior cabinet and military officials. On Friday, the Hague-based office of the chief prosecutor published an unprecedented statement on Twitter calling for an end to threats of retaliation against the ICC and attempts to impede and intimidate its officials. The statement added that such threats could constitute an offense against the administration of justice under the Rome Statute. So here is the statement that they mentioned that they tweeted out. We'll read through this. The Office of the Prosecutor is aware that there is significant public interest in its investigations, and it welcomes comments, communication of concerns, and engagement in its activities from state and elected officials, non-governmental organizations, scholars, and activists. The office seeks to engage constructively with all stakeholders whenever such dialogue is consistent with its mandate under the Rome Statute to act independently and impartially. That independence and impartiality are undermined, however, when individuals threaten to retaliate against the court or against the court personnel should the office, in fulfillment of its mandate, make decisions about investigations or cases falling within its jurisdiction. Such threats, even when not acted upon, may also constitute an offense against the administration of justice under Article 70 of the Rome Statute. That provision explicitly prohibits both retaliating against an official of the court on account of duties performed by that or another official and impeding, intimidating, or corruptly influencing an official of the court for the purpose of forcing or persuading the official not to perform or to perform improperly his or her duties. The office insists that all attempts to impede, intimidate, or improperly influence its officials cease immediately. In their letter, the dozen Republican senators remind Khan that the U.S. demonstrated in the American Service Members Protection Act the lengths to which we will go to protect its sovereignty. Here that comes up again. The ASPA, signed into law by George W. Bush in 2002, has since become widely known as the Hague Invasion Act because it authorizes the United States president to use all means necessary and appropriate to bring about the release not just of U.S. persons, but also allies who are imprisoned or detained by the ICC. Now, maybe I'm a dumb guy. I had never heard of this until this article came up. Had you?
No.
No. So
No.
George Bush, the good, reasonable Republican.
Why would it come up? This has got to be the first time in history, really, that any international organization is talking about holding an ally of the United States accountable for war crimes.
That's true. That's true. And so it's a good thing that reasonable Republican, the good Republican, the non-fascist Republican, George W. Bush, who shares candies with the Obamas and who you can have a reasonable disagreement with, it's a good thing he passed this act here. Authority to free members of the armed forces of the U.S. and certain other persons detained or imprisoned on behalf of, the International Criminal Court. So let's read the letter of this law that the good non-Trump, pro-American Republican George W. Bush signed into law. The president is authorized to use all means necessary and appropriate to bring about the release of any person described in subsection B who is being detained or imprisoned by, on behalf of, or at the request of the International Criminal Court. Section B, all persons authorized to be freed. The authority of subsection A shall extend to the following persons: covered United States persons, covered allied persons, i.e. Benjamin Netanyahu and whoever else they decide to issue these warrants for, individuals detained or imprisoned, item 3, for official actions taken while the individual was a covered United States person or a covered allied person, and in the case of a covered allied person, upon the request of such governments. When any person described in subsection B is arrested, detained, investigated, prosecuted, or imprisoned by, on behalf of, or at the request of the ICC, the president, meaning the president of the United States, is authorized to direct any agency of the government to provide legal representation and other legal assistance to that person. And number 2, exculpatory evidence on behalf of that person and defense of the interests of the United States through appearance before the ICC pursuant to Article 18 or 19 of the Rome Statute, or before the courts or tribunals of any country. This section does not authorize the payment of bribes or the provision of other such incentives to induce the release of a person described in subsection B. Apparently, it doesn't itemize threats as being out of bounds. It does say in Article A, the president is authorized to use all means necessary and appropriate. So I would think threatening to bar the families of the ICC personnel from the United States, I would consider that inappropriate. But apparently, that's a judgment call. On Friday, White House Press Secretary
it sounds like it does authorize sending in the Navy SEALs.
Yes. On Friday, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre told reporters that the administration opposes any threats or intimidations to public officials, including ICC officials, but that the president does not support this investigative probe. The White House declined to comment to ZDO on the senator's letter, as did the ICC Chief Prosecutor's Office in The Hague. I love this. Senator Katie Britt of Alabama, she's the one who cried, I think, in response to the Biden's State of the Union. One of the letter's Republican signatories told ZDO it was not a threat, a promise. Yeah, that's what everybody tells you when they threaten you, right? They say, if you don't pay me tomorrow, I'm coming for you. And that's not a threat. That's a promise. She literally uses that language. The 11 other Republican senators who signed did not respond to ZDO's requests for comment. So that's amazing. You have 12 Republican senators threatening consequences against these ICC personnel and their families. And they are invoking this law that I would wager most of us didn't even know existed, that good old George W. Bush passed through in 2002, which basically gives the United States the right to invade the ICC. That's why they say it's loosely called, the Hague Invasion Act, right? Basically gave us the right to attack the International Criminal Court. So,
that's how
but once
fast
again,
it takes
folks,
for a guy to get whacked.
Yes, once again, Donald Trump is the fascist GOPer. George Bush is the good Republican.
He's the good one.
Republican.
He's the good one you could have honest disagreements with.
Yeah.
Not like Trump. He never ruined anyone's Thanksgiving.
Right.
Yeah. Well, this is where, when you debate with Zionists, as I will subject myself to on occasion, you never meet a Zionist who doesn't also swallow all that horse shit because one goes with the other. You have to believe that the United States is an intrinsically moral country faced with difficult geopolitical choices in a messy world. You know, that whole Time magazine bullshit.
Right.
You have to buy that to buy into Zionism because Zionism is propped up by that premise, and the core premise, if you really put, I had someone I was debating say to me, like, it's almost worth debating them because if you really dig down, they'll say shit they won't say at first blush because it's too fucked up. But if you push them hard enough, well, I've heard them argue. Well, they were governed by other people; they weren't self-governing. But I hadn't heard the argument they didn't have a culture, or I didn't hone in on it. But you know, that's deeply racist, and anybody who watches the show knows I don't throw that term around lightly. I think it's used too easily these days, but I'll throw it around where it's appropriate.
Where it applies, yeah.
That's fucking, of course that's racist. So on what grounds are you saying they didn't have a culture? Because they were colonized by other people before the Jews colonized them? So that means they didn't have a culture? Well, so Native Americans didn't have a culture because we occupied them and they didn't govern themselves? Does that mean they didn't have a, so all colonized people really don't have a culture at that point. It's incredible how and with Zionists, because they tend to think of themselves as liberals. Most Jews are Democrats, right? Liberal Democrats in this country. All of their formulations are these just classic right-wing Western chauvinist kind of racist ideas. They know very little about the history of Jews living peacefully in those countries, and that's not just Jews, it's not just Zionists, it's Americans. I've seen people go up and make speeches about how terrible things were for the Jews in over the past hundreds of years in Muslim countries. How the fuck can you say that when you're standing on the platform of Western Christianity? During the Inquisition, Jews fled to North Africa because they were welcomed there. And most people don't know that history. Most Zionists certainly don't know that history. Even if you ask most people who are sympathetic or somewhat sympathetic or consider themselves liberal on the issue, which usually means two-state solution, they don't know anything about that because we've been propagandized to think that Muslim peoples are savages. Let's face it, that's the narrative, right? They're backwards savages with no decency. They're violent. It's the old barbarian trope dressed up in a new guise, but it's the same stuff. You know, they're gonna rape your women and children, and you can't live with them. And somebody tell me, and as Zionists often will, if you really get them to the one-state solution conversation, well, what, you think they're just gonna live there peacefully with them? All right, so one, you're conceding that there's something for them to be angry about, right? When you make that argument, they're afraid they're going to take revenge. And B, that is the same exact argument you heard in the last days of South Africa. That's exactly what the white South Africans argued, that they could not get rid of apartheid because there'd be a slaughter, that the blacks would come and slaughter them. It's the same exact argument. In the end, an apartheid state, once you go down that road of apartheid, well, of course you feel like you have to maintain it because look what you did to these people. Right.
You know, absolutely. Let's go. DC, woke originally meant aware of government atrocity. Thank you, DC.
Yeah, you know, since you bring it up, I want to mention, because whenever we use that term, you get some people who say, originally this was a term of black people. Yes, we know. We know.
Oops, sorry. Am I good?
Have you heard of
is my sound all right?
Yeah, your sound's
okay. I just knocked the cable.
So there's a term called linguistic drift, and words change their meaning over time. So yes, that's originally where it came from and what it meant. You know where we got the word slave from? Most of the slaves used to be Slavic. They were Slavic people. That's why we say slave. Does it mean that now? So words change.
I can guarantee that the Ukraine has dirt home footage. They have a window into politicians' lives. Even if not explicit, that shit messes with your mind. Thank you, Henry DeShazo.
Well, you think Ukraine does. I mean, you know, our friend with the plane who died
Israel,
under mysterious circumstances.
Absolutely. Yeah. Things are not getting worse, just getting uncovered. We must continue to hold strong as the veil keeps getting pulled back. Much love to you all. Much love to you, Seb. Thank you for the donation.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. AD, thanks for the $20. That's kind of you. Daily Wire tells us racism is solved in the workplace. I mean, far be it for an employer to underhandedly make a resume disappear because that's illegal. Yes. Oh, but they'll totally go on the dark web to blackmail activists. Yes, indeed. Thank you. Horse crap, Keaton. Hitchens would quite deservedly hitch slap the snot out of this argument. Also, you forgot Thunderfoot. I don't remember what argument specifically, but I'm assuming that was something in the Lee Fang thing. Let's see. Russ, these guys don't want to end up like Nick Fuentes. Just like some can say N-word, Gentiles can't be the arbiter of what is anti-Semitism. Back from the road, the only war Congress will vote on beforehand is with the Hague. Yes, thank you for that. Appreciate that. Who said something? There was some chant that I wanted to highlight. Did I lose it? I forgot. Ellen Jimerson, thanks for the $1.
Hey, Ellen.
Hey, Ellen. Remember 2022, DHS proclaims Ms. Maldi's fax information that causes doubt about U.S. government a terrorism threat under its domain. Fong wrote about it in The Intercept.
Oh, wow.
Wow. I'll have to look that up. Maybe we'll bring that up when we interview him because he'll come on at some point. Doc Durkin, great little interview with Lee Fang. Nice filming location too, Russell. Your overall credentials keep increasing, sir. Yeah, well, that microphone came in handy too because we were out there. You saw a little.
I swear to God, the first time I ever used it was that fucking Schellenberger interview, and I was so nervous it wasn't going to work. You know, like the first time you use a new technology.
Yeah. Tom, you guys are falling down on the job. I've known about the Hague Invasion Act for many years. Threw it in many people's faces when they were arguing with me about issuing a warrant for Putin. Yeah, I'll admit it. I was a little surprised I hadn't heard of that because I was pretty tuned into the Iraq War stuff. But I think, like Russell said, almost everyone really who we accuse of war crimes are our adversaries. So it doesn't really come up because when is an ally of ours, under threat in this way? Right. So that's why. Yeah. No, it flew under the radar for 22 years. I had not heard of it. So
it's so hard. You know what we haven't gotten to. I might actually do a shit post about this. So after we dropped the Banush Karen video, a lot of people said, look at the Times article. She's from the IMF. That's her background. And, that very closely parallels what we see at Boeing. That would be an interesting shitpost because, it used to be if you were a university president, you came out of academia. And now these university presidents come out of finance and they're destroying the universities. They're financializing the universities. This is part of why the tuition is exploding. It's the reason Boeing can't make planes anymore.
Right.
Right. There's a parallel. It's the overall financialization of the economy eating away at the way everything is supposed to function.
Right. Dave Delarai, thanks for the $10, Dave. My dog's turned 6 today. Oh, happy birthday to your pups. I also watched 39 minutes of Bree's panel and almost couldn't take it. Hopefully she comes on to react to it this week. Good on you for filming it, as I would have walked out. I'm assuming you watched Russell's live stream.
When we dropped it.
Yeah, because to our knowledge, no one else has dropped it yet. But yeah, we took it down when they asked us to. So hopefully it surfaces again. I don't know. They're really sitting on this video for a long time. It's Tuesday already.
And they haven't dropped any of them?
I don't see any of them. I don't see anything. No. Sparky, thanks for the $5. Fun fact, in 1492, the Ottoman Empire sent ships to rescue Jews from the Spanish Inquisition.
It's true. Yep. That's true. I know, and this is history they do not teach you, right? Because it complicates their narrative.
Sparky, make Israel Syria again. In those Ottoman Empire days, Levant Jews got along fine with their neighbors, whether Muslim, Christian, or otherwise. Thank you very much. The Vulture Vanity Show says, please consider having Whitney Webb on DD. She has been on Jimmy 3 times and is doing eye-opening work on the surveillance state.
You know, to be honest with you, the reason, I mean, I'm speaking for myself, we haven't had her on. I don't know her shit well enough.
Yeah, I'd have to research.
I'd like to change that. It's one of the hard things in this gig. Like, you have to keep up with the current events.
Right.
So then to find enough time to do any kind of extracurricular research
to go back and learn.
It's very difficult.
Right. Yeah, indeed. All right, folks, we got one more segment on the day before we close the lights until tomorrow. And this is the most pressing of the day for sure. Israel orders partial evacuation of Rafah, fueling fears of new offensive. Hamas says it has agreed to a ceasefire plan that Israel said did not meet its demands, the latest in a long series of negotiating stumbles, as the New York Times puts them. Israeli warplanes pounded targets in the southern Gaza city of Rafah on Monday as the military told about 110,000 people sheltering there to evacuate. Many people began to leave, fearing that Israel was moving ahead with its long-planned invasion of Rafah, despite stiff international pressure. Yeah, stiff pressure. Right. If it were stiff, they wouldn't be planning on doing it. The Israeli military began dropping leaflets in eastern Rafah, telling people to move to what it called a humanitarian zone to the north, and said it would also notify people by text messages, phone calls, and broadcasts in Arabic. I hope the Wi-Fi is good in those tents so they can get those text messages. Yeah. And on Monday night, the Israeli military carried out another round of what it called targeted strikes in Rafah against Hamas. 2/3 of the victims of those targeted strikes, by the way, women and children. What else?
I heard they got a crazy Warhammer League going on in the camps there.
An infant was killed. 7-year-old boy lost his twin brother in those targeted strikes. Targeted, quote unquote. There's video that I can't show you here. I wouldn't if I could. It's horrible. If you want to seek it out, I can't advise you to, but it's there for you to see. So here's a map of the evacuation zone. Area under evacuation order: southeast Gaza Strip, eastern Rafah near the Rafah border crossing, which Russ has some information on in a few minutes, and then this dark shaded gray area is the supposed humanitarian zone where they're instructing people to flee. Notice up there to the north, not safe again. That was safe a few weeks ago, quote unquote, not safe anymore. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office said in a statement late on Monday that the war cabinet had decided unanimously to continue with its action in Rafah in order to exert military pressure on Hamas, though it was not clear if that meant the latest airstrikes or something broader. It's pretty clear it means something broader. They have tanks lined up already. A military spokesman would not say when troops might enter the crowded city, but described the evacuation as part of Israel's plan to dismantle Hamas and to free hostages taken on October 7th. Hours after the evacuation order, the political leader of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, issued a statement that the group had accepted a new ceasefire proposal from Qatar and Egypt, which have acted as intermediaries in peace talks. The group and Israeli officials said it was not referring to the proposal that Israel recently agreed to, leaving the conflict unresolved. On Sunday, the talks appeared to reach an impasse, with Israel and Hamas still sharply at odds over the duration of any truce, and each side blaming the other for the failure to strike a deal. Hamas wants a permanent ceasefire, while Mr. Netanyahu of Israel has expressed openness only to a temporary halt in the fighting and has said Israel would invade Rafah with or without an agreement. Yoav Gallant, Israel's defense minister, met with the relatives of the hostages on Monday and told them that we are committed to achieving the war's objectives, but Hamas's rejection of any framework that would allow the release of the hostages compels us to start the Rafah operation, according to a statement from his office. Even after the start of the operation in Rafah, Mr. Gallant said all efforts to return the hostages will continue. On Monday, President Biden spoke to Netanyahu and updated him on the hostage talks, which were continuing on Monday in Qatar, according to a brief summary of the call released by the White House. Mr. Biden also reiterated his clear position on Rafah. This clear position was a red line a few months ago. Let's see if it remains a red line, because rumor has it they compromised on that. And those rumors are looking truer and truer every day. The White House statement said Mr. Netanyahu's office did not immediately release its own summary of the conversation. After the Israeli military issued its evacuation order, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak of Britain reiterated that he remained deeply concerned about an invasion, while Saudi Arabia's foreign ministry warned Israel against advancing what it called a bloody and systematic campaign to storm all of Gaza and displace its residents. Yeah, when Saudi Arabia says, whoa, too far, that's how you know you're going too far. In Rafah, some Palestinians quickly dismantled their tents in the pouring rain and began leaving. Others questioned whether it was safe to leave. Gazans and aid groups have said that the Israeli military has bombed areas that it has previously designated as safe for civilians. We're going to watch a few minutes of an Al Jazeera report on this evacuation right now.
The army has warned all residents and displaced people to leave the eastern neighborhoods of Rafah. It says they must move to the Al-Mawasi area near the coastline. That's ahead of what it says will be the use of extreme force in the eastern part of the city. More than 1.5 million people have been sheltering in Rafah after the Israeli army forced them out of northern and central Gaza. Well, we're joined now by Hani Mahmoud, who's in Rafah in southern Gaza. Hani, what's happening there on the ground right now?
Yes, well, following an intense night of extreme airstrikes, relentless airstrikes across the eastern and the central part of Rafah city caused the murder of 20 people so far, mostly women and children. The Israeli military has early hours this morning issued statements along with a map for evacuation. The orders are very extreme, very sharp, and use intimidating language describing what's going to happen in the eastern part of the city, along with the use of extreme force and an extreme military operation is going to take place at the eastern part of Rafah city. That includes all the area eastern of Salah ad-Din Road and almost close to the center Rafah city. That's at the western part of Salah ad-Din Road. That will include definitely Rafah crossings. And as of yesterday, we learned that Karm Abu Salim crossing has been completely shut down. And the operation right now that is included, Rafah crossing right now, including in the evacuation orders, will be closed as soon as the operation is started in the eastern part of Rafah city. People are in a state of panic and shock, despite that they expected that to happen, but did not expect it to happen rapidly. We were approached by people who were asking about where are the evacuation zones, and we looked at the maps, and what we've seen so far, it stretches from the central area, from Deir al-Balah city, passing through Khan Yunis, mainly in the central part of Khan Yunis and the western part of Khan Yunis, all the way to the evacuation zone here
look at the
in
videos
western
of these
part
people
of
packing
Rafah
up
city.
and
These are the three major areas. The leaflets designated as safe areas in which they will be receiving, according to the leaflet dropped by the Israeli military. According to this leaflet, it says this is where all the humanitarian support will be directed. That is something indicating, as many people reacted to this, that this operation is going to be long, and it's unclear without any time frame when it's going to end. And that's what's going on right now on the ground. People have started to move toward the central area and the western part of Rafah city. It's important also to point out the past 3 days witnessed a quiet evacuation, sort of people who somehow predicted that the talks in Cairo about the ceasefire were not making any solid progress, and the Israeli military, in light of the growing threats of expanding the operation into Rafah city, they started to move quietly to areas that are not designated by the Israeli military as safe zones, given the past failures of the Israeli military to assure that these evacuation zones are in fact safe.
I mean, just an incredibly tragic situation. And I want you to look at this map here, because Israel is saying this is going to be an extremely aggressive act when they go in. Now, if they're using the word extreme, just like when Netanyahu used the word unprecedented to describe their response to October 7th, and we knew that was going to be genocide because genocide is the only violence that would truly be unprecedented on Israel's part. When they say how extreme this is going to be, look at that red line that they drew through the city of Rafah. I mean, these are city streets. Russell mentioned this in the past. We've talked about this in the past. This map, this is not the first time we've seen this. They have numbered zones, and they'll say, okay, now go to zone whatever, 26, now zone 7, now zone 4. You're telling me Israel knows with confidence that their bombardment is going to end at these red lines here? I mean, come on.
Well, they don't care. They don't care. They'll tell you to go there and bomb you there anyway.
Well, that's what I mean. It's 1.5 million people. You're saying 100,000 need to be evacuated when the city of Rafah has 1.5 million. Now, they would say, well, most of those 1.5 million are in the gray zone, not the red zone, so they're not in immediate danger. Yeah. Take them at their word for that, I'm sure, right? Secondly, even if the number is 100,000, according to a report I saw, they're evacuating at a rate of about 200 per hour, which is 2,400 per day. At this rate, it's going to take almost 2 months to get 100,000 people out of there. So they're not going to get anywhere near that many people out of there. And we know Israel is not going to wait 50 or 60 days to do this. They already have tanks parked outside of the Rafah crossing.
They don't care. They don't care.
Right.
They just want to be able to say that they tried to do something.
That's it. It is all about plausible deniability when the ICC warrant gets handed down or when the ICJ ruling gets handed down or under any circumstance. They want to be able to say we dropped leaflets, we made text messages. It's up to them. So this was not the only development on this front. Israel actually seized the Rafah border crossing. So, Russell, you have this.
Okay, so this is really what Israel has done throughout its entire history. There is literally a phrase in Hebrew. I got to talk to a Hebrew-speaking friendly, which is not easy to find, about what this word is. But there's a word that translates as establishing facts in the field. And the spirit of it is like our phrase, better to ask forgiveness than permission. That is how Israel has conducted itself for 75 years. They play stupid. They pretend to be negotiating things that they have no intention of negotiating, like this ceasefire. I'm sure they offered Hamas just crazy terms that they couldn't possibly accept to make sure they wouldn't accept them.
Well, the temporary nature of the truce. I mean, the fact that they're saying it's only going to be temporary, we're going into Rafah either way, that guarantees the destruction of Gaza as a livable place. So that you may as well, like, I mean, I guess you're allowing a window of time for aid to come in, but you're not guaranteeing any kind of meaningful peace for the people there. You're just buying people a month to either get aid in or get some people out where they're going to go. Egypt won't have them. Like, it's ludicrous. I just want to issue a correction. My math was wrong. So it's not 2,400 a day. It would be 4,800 a day at 200 an hour, right? Because it would take about 3 weeks, a little over 3 weeks. All
right. And really seizing this border crossing, this is the fact they wanted to establish in the field. They wanted to take over that border crossing because this is a people, the Israelis, who have been controlling the water, the electricity, the access to the sea. This was one of the few things they didn't have control over, the border with Egypt. Right. They'll never give that up. And now that they took it, that's part of what this operation is about.
Yep.
So they have seized that. Israeli forces took control of the Rafah border crossing with Egypt on Tuesday, making their first ground incursion into the densely packed southern Gaza city, shutting down the flow of aid, sending thousands of civilians fleeing, and infuriating neighboring Egypt. Yeah, that and a nickel won't get you on the subway. Yep. An official from the Israel Defense Forces said infantry troops and an armored battalion gained operational control of the Palestinian side of the crossing. The official, who spoke on the condition of anonymity in line with Army protocol, said 20 militants were killed and 3 tunnel shafts uncovered in what he described as a specific targeting operation that continued on Tuesday morning. Now, I just want to make note, I can't say whether this is true or not true, but a source that I don't know the reliability of claimed that those were employees who were executed and not actually militants. The operation imperiled already fragile Israeli relations with Egypt, which has repeatedly warned Israel that military action on the border could violate a 4-decade-old peace treaty between the two countries. Quote, Egypt vehemently denounces the Israeli military operation in Palestinian Rafah, which has resulted in Israel controlling the Palestinian side of the border, the Egyptian Foreign Ministry said in a statement. It described the incursion as a dangerous escalation that was threatening ceasefire efforts, adding that the operation endangered the lives of the million Palestinians who depend on the crossing for humanitarian aid and a safe way out for the injured and patients to get treatment. Both Rafah closing and Kerem Shalom, the 2 main aid entry points to the south, have been closed by the fighting, according to Israeli and Palestinian officials. Yeah, Egypt, that's like when the Chihuahua runs up to the fence when you're walking by.
Right.
They're not going to do shit. They're not going to do shit. And Max laid out when we were on Jimmy's show effectively how they're all bought. They're all bought. All of these governments are bought and paid for. So we have some video. We want to use Al Jazeera as much as possible after what Israel did to their offices.
And they're the best ones.
They are the best ones.
Yeah.
The Israeli military has taken control of Gaza's Rafah border crossing with Egypt. Israel has threatened a full ground invasion despite international outcry and calls for a ceasefire. All right, so let me see which one is. It's the other
That's
one.
the other one.
World's most moral army, folks. World's most moral army. This piece of shit made a point of running over the I Love Gaza sign and making a joke of it.
And the shots are making a show of it too. He's not shooting anybody. It's spectacle for the camera. There goes another one.
Look at the flag. Look at the flag. I thought you're not taking over the territory. Poor people. So, and now, again, they're not taking over this territory, but here we have from, what's that, RL7? The IOF raised the Israeli flag at the Rafah border. We've been saying their goal was never to save the hostages. They only wanted more and more land to steal. And I think that's true. They'll just blame Hamas if all the hostages die. They're not worried about that. So let's...
The size of this flag.
ארצי פילדלפי, תראו איזה יופי.
Like a tarp on a baseball field, this flag. You can cover a baseball diamond with this flag.
Yeah, that's not, they're not trying to colonize at all. No, they're there to save the hostages. This is it. October 7th was a pretext to supercharge what has been their intention all along, from the river to the sea. It's in the Likud charter, from the river to the sea.
Yes.
But what it means to them is a Jewish state from the Jordan to the sea with no Palestinians.
That's right. What it means to them is actually genocidal. What it means to the ceasefire activists and to the Free Palestine activists is equal rights on this land. But what it means to the Israelis, specifically, as Russell said, to the Likud party, is the exact opposite. And I think that is
their
why,
charter.
yes, that's why they're so bent on going into Rafah. They want to control that border.
Yep. This is just another step towards their ultimate aim, which at best is ethnic cleansing, at best, and at worst is genocide. Right. And in the playing out of it is somewhere in between.
That's right. It's not that it is their explicit goal to kill the maximum number of people. That is incidental. They're willing to kill as many as they have to in order to ethnically purge Gaza and claim it for themselves. And, we've already done this before. Like I said, time has folded in on itself. We've already done this before where we've gone after students for protesting and then things got really bad and everybody said, wow, this is really terrible. And I posited, don't you feel like idiots for criticizing the Gen Zers who are protesting this? Well, it looks like the same thing is going to happen again because now everybody is saying in advance of this, and we, the Americans, as a state, meaning the position of Biden and his team, is that we don't want this. But even those who don't want this are saying, you're seeing people like John Fetterman saying, well, Hamas is to blame for whatever happens. That's how you know they know it's going to be horrible, because they're already saying this isn't Israel's fault. It's not Israel's fault that they go in.
Hamas can just free the hostages.
Exactly. Meanwhile, these full hostage exchanges have already been proposed and rejected. This latest is not the first. I don't even know when this was now. I lost track of time. I believe this was back in March, if I'm not mistaken, maybe even February. There was a complete hostage swap on the table that Israel rejected because Israel needs to, quote unquote, finish the war, which means leveling every section of this land. That's obviously what it means. They've made their way from north to south, and now they're at the border. So now they seize the border, and now they're going to go in.
Right.
And who's going to stop them? Where's Mr. Red Line? Right.
And when you get into the post-war, we're already hearing this. Biden's talking about taking Palestinian refugees. This is it. This is their plan. What else are you going to do? They've made it unlivable. They've made it impossible to live there.
Yep. We should give them the state of Delaware. That should be the Palestinian state. It's shaped a little bit like their land anyway. I think that'd be good.
Well,
that should be their state.
Given who started all this, I still say the Rhine.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's still the fair thing. Yeah, I agree. Okay, we're gonna take some super chats before we close the lights on this stream. Thank you guys very much for. Oh, you know what we almost forgot to do? That was stupid of me. I meant to do this earlier. We almost forgot.
Patron crawl.
To shout out our patrons. That's right. We almost forgot to do that. That would have been no good. All right. Believe me, not good. All right. Let's do that while we take these super chats. Folks, our live shows are now sold out, by the way. Sold out. Both shows. So those of you who can't come are not going to have to sit through these annoying extended pitches of ours anymore. That's good news for you guys.
Mr. Hooper. Counting money all your life.
Exactly. But you can go to patreon.com/2dissidents and help us support this program. Our Patreon members, our local subscribers, and our Substack subscribers are the backbone of this show. That's why we're doing 4 shows a week right now. So if you want to go to patreon.com and help us out, we appreciate that very much. You can also go to our Substack, dudissidents.substack.com, or you can join our locals, which is dudissidents.locals.com if you are on Rumble right now. 2,700 of you on Rumble right now. That's amazing. You can click that join button right underneath the video screen and sign up for as little as $5 a month. You get a shout out on the show scroll here. You also get call-in access to our post-show Q&As every Sunday night and access to 2 exclusive patron supporter streams per month. In June, you will have access to more than that. You'll get to live stream our live show in New York City. And so, once again, if you can sign up, we do our best to make it worth your while. You guys are the backbone of this program. So thank you guys very much for your support. Let's go to
from God.
Yes. Ian DeMartino, thanks for the $1. Just checked out Jesse Wells on the recommendation of that other listener. Definitely reach out to him. Amazing stuff. We will.
Cool.
Indeed. If you guys ever sell weed.
What are all the activist musicians named Jesse? What the fuck is this?
That's true. Jesse Jett and Jesse Wells.
This seems like a conspiracy to me.
Good observation. I didn't even think of that. If you guys ever sell weed, you could sell the scumbag, douchebag, dime bag. Yeah, that's good.
Do they even sell dime bags anymore? I don't think so.
I imagine with inflation.
What would you get, like 3 seeds?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Doc Durkin, looking forward to the BRICS version of the ICC, where such threats and intimidation would be seen as unlawful and likely punishable. Yes, thank you. Bonzo Beans, in case you missed it, Duchess Meghan is liaising with the ghost of Lady Di to keep Prince Harry in line. Interesting. Thank you. Believe all women. It's funny. All right, we got a couple more Rumble rants, which we'll get to in a moment, but I want to go to some of our YouTube super chatters here. Shinobilly for $5. Buck Angel questioning how Jewish Russell is seems like peak projection from someone who didn't know what gender they were. Yeah, exactly. He replied to you, by the way. I checked it.
Oh,
during the I checked it.
Oh, what did he say?
He asked if you're sure you're Jewish. Are you sure you're Jewish? Very
this
intelligent
fucking
response.
scumbag douchebag.
very,
I mean, clearly you have to respond with, "Are you sure you're a man?"
Of course, that's like the obvious one. That's a lob ball right down the middle.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, that's right over home.
That's a flat fastball, just right over the middle outside corner. Sam Fadul, someone tell Christy Nome Gaza's full of puppies and baby goats, and she'll have the place empty of life by this afternoon. Yeah, she can help
all
the
right, we should do that
evacuation.
one on Thursday morning. I sent you that.
Yes, yeah, we got
to follow up on that. Yeah.
Jews funded Columbus, the other 1492 by Dr. Norm Finkelstein. Thank you, Penny Arcos. Back from the road, thanks for the $9.99. Hamas agreed to a ceasefire proposed by Egypt, Qatar, and the U.S. Israel responds by taking Zone D of the Philadelphia corridor, violating the 1979 Camp David Accords with Egypt. This is not insignificant. That's interesting. I'll have to look into that.
The question is, will Egypt do anything about it?
Yeah, exactly. How long before the Israel lobby tries to get our government to ban or limit Al Jazeera over here? You guys are really great. Thanks. Thank you, Palaganda. And yes, I mean, that is a question. Here's a question. I don't think this government would go so as far as to do that. They might think that's a little too obvious, but you never know. I have no words for Israel's barbarity towards the Palestinians, says Windy Melly, and the civil world is silent. Yep. Indeed. Doesn't the Israeli flag's blue lines represent the Jordan and the sea? I believe they do, actually. I believe that is what the 2 lines on the Israeli flag do represent.
Do that? I didn't even know that.
I believe that's true. Okay. KDK7. Bob Dylan is a Zionist.
Is he?
I don't know. If that's true, he can blow me in the wind. But I don't know. I'm not sure. He's pretty, I don't know.
I mean, he's from that generation.
He is from that generation, but I haven't heard him say anything about that.
And he's pretty Jewish. He has like a Rebbe in, where is he from? Minnesota.
Yeah, he's from Duluth. No war crime if it hurts the bottom line, says Eric Torres. Thank you for that. Rhineland-Palatinate is a province of Germany. Excuse me. Rename it Rhineland-Palestine. Yeah. Good plan. That's what Russell says. Indeed. All right. That is our show today, folks. Another good one. Thank you guys very much for being here. We appreciate you all. We will be back on Rumble exclusively tomorrow. So there is a show tomorrow. That's a Rumble exclusive. moving forward, we're going to maybe split streams. We won't make every Wednesday Rumble Day, but this week, since we already announced it, it is Rumble Day exclusively tomorrow. So make sure you are subscribed to our Rumble channel. You can go to DueDissidents.com. rumble.com/Due Dissidents to find that channel and hit that follow button. That's where we will be tomorrow at 2 p.m. Make sure you are signed up to our Substack. Even if you sign up as a free member, that gives you access to our newsletter where you can get emails every day, a few hours before the show, letting you know when and where we're going to be live. You also get audio podcast versions of all of these live streams for free and the occasional article. We are going to be dropping some articles in the coming days and weeks, so keep an eye out for that. We will also see you tomorrow, 2 p.m. on Rumble. Oh, we got one guy in before the buzzer here. P. Walker, the hardcore Zionist. The 2 lines on the Israeli flag represent the Niles and the Euphrates. Yeah, there you go. Thank you, P. Walker. Alrighty, guys. We thank you very much for being here with us today. We had a great time with you. Thank you very much for tuning in. We will see you guys tomorrow on Rumble at 2 p.m. Eastern. Until then, be safe and be well.
Courage.
Please clap.